Welcome to the second episode of the FAQCrew DM chat. This time we have another guest who goes ahead and introduces himself, please.
Sure. My name is Jake. I go by Daspiff on Twitter, everywhere online. I am a longtime fan of Critical Role. I've been watching since around episode 15 or so. I've been playing D&D since my freshman year of college. First time playing was 4th edition, just a two-shot game that fizzled out. I played a full 3.5 campaign and then heard about the 5th edition basic rules being free and went looking for that, and then discovered Critical Role and joined and started running a game, joined a game since then. So,
all right, so you already answered my first question, basically. How did you get into role-playing and DMing?
Yeah, I ran a couple one-shots in college, it happened a lot in college where you would try and start a game, run 1-2 sessions, and then it would just sort of fizzle out because people wouldn't commit to the schedule. But now in the real world, it's easier to find people who can be like, okay, this is something we want to do, let's coordinate our schedules and do it.
Yeah. So D&D was your introduction to role-playing as well?
Yes, so it was 4th edition briefly, and then 3.5, and yeah.
Okay, and currently you're DMing a regular group, or?
I wouldn't say regular. We meet every month and a half.
Yeah, I know that.
But yeah, I'm playing in a group that meets weekly. But the one that I'm DMing, it's we're all a bunch of young professionals in the city, so we're scattered.
Yeah, and what do you DM? Do you DM a module, or did you homebrew a world?
I actually homebrewed a world. I stole the map from, there's a D&D podcast called God's Fall. I just stole the map from that, just so that I had basic country and political outlines and a map to place them in the world in. And then just I've been making up my own plot and world for it. I'm actually I've realized that this is my first time DMing a lasting campaign. I've realized that I'm not a great world builder. I'm a scientist. I'm a very logically brained person, and I love figuring out the puzzle, and I love running a session. But the world building, that creative side of it, is not my specialty. So I'm actually going to be switching to doing a lot more stringing together modules, and so I've been starting to research some online.
Okay, so world building, you say it's hard for you because you don't think that way.
Yeah, I'm just not a world builder. I can have the ideas, but I can't sit down and plan out a session well. It just my brain. I've never been considered myself an artist, and I'm certainly a creative person, but I'm not a production of art or creative works.
Okay, so my next question would have been, or in general, do you let the players who have their ideas about characters, backgrounds, and so on, does that influence your campaign world at all?
Oh, absolutely. One of my players had this great background where he was a cleric of Thor, but was not officially ordained by the church, and he had this very my campaign. The players are on a ship and they're sailing about, just doing their own thing. They're actually cursed and bound to the ship, which they haven't actually explored. They haven't actually explored that plot thread yet. And then they keep referencing it in role playing. You're like, oh shit, we can't leave the ship for long periods of time. But they haven't actually investigated why, how. So I do have all that background planned, but they haven't researched it. But so they're basically sailors, and this particular character, his background is very anti-piracy, hates pirates, but some of the actions they've been doing have been kind of murder hobo-ish. And so I had an NPC call them out as, you guys are being you guys are pirates.
Nice.
And he's not having so much fun playing that particular character, so he actually spoke to me about wanting to switch characters, and he said to me, and hey, a good way for it to go out, here's a suggestion of an on-screen death we could do for him. So I've taken that idea and I'm starting to run with it. I won't spoil anything in case he watches.
Yeah, have to be careful. So you have an overall or a story arc with the cursed ship. How would you categorize your campaign in general? Is it role-playing heavy? Is it battle heavy? how would you call it? What would you call it?
It's been a little more exploration and battle than role play, I would say, but I do try and get a mix of all three, all three pillars of the game, as they call it, exploration, combat, and role play. I try and touch on all of them. When I make my notes, it's just a scattered list of in my brain of things that I'll do. There was one moment that I'll never forget. So you asked, how do I let them influence the game world? Yeah. So I was planning a new city that they were going to go to. And I was, just planning out. I was like, okay, it's a kind of high wealth trade city. They've got a pretty active, entertainment center. And I was just writing down a list of, like what kind of information would you know about this city, having lived in this world. And I as a joke that made me laugh, I wrote as an offhand thing, there's a bear wrestling is a thing that happens in the city. And my players just hooked onto that and ran with it. I had nothing prepared, but they were seeking out a crime boss in the city, and they came up with this whole plan. Okay, we're gonna have the druid wild shape into a bear. We're gonna go release the other bear. We're going to convince the guy running the thing that we brought our bear to fight their bear. But you wanted the bears the right people. Well, we got a trained bear. Let's enter our bear, and they fixed the fight. And it was this whole beautiful thing. It turned into this two-hour planning and execution thing that was just hilarious. And that's been my greatest moment as a DM so far. It's just them improvising that and us just all rolling with it, and just one idea on top of the next.
That sounds really fun. So you are also one of the DMs who say yes.
I try to. I mean, on Critical Role, they've recommended taking improv classes, and I've started looking into that. It sounds like it would be really useful and fun.
Yeah. Okay, so you just answered a lot of my questions. Just going along, so let's talk about player death or player character death.
Sure.
How do you handle it?
So I actually I had to handle it. I got my first kill as a DM a few sessions ago, and it was an interesting experience. It was the players were going into the woods from this was after the bear wrestling thing. They were going into the woods looking for an NPC, and they didn't ask any questions around the city about the guy that they were looking for. Mm-hmm. They just heard, okay, he's in the woods, and they just went to the woods. So they didn't try and learn what kind of dangers are in the woods. Is there a safe path or a difficult path? Yes. So they just started going forward, and so they got hit with some random encounters. Yeah. And they fought some phase spiders. Nice. I think they fought an Allosaurus. And then they were fighting a displacer beast. They set up camp, and they decided to announce to themselves, like, thaumaturgy out into the woods, like, hey, NPC, if you're out there, we're looking for you. Yeah. And so a displacer beast came and attacked, and it was a very long, drawn-out fight, because it just kept rolling high on their saving throw, and they have the special ability where if they impose disadvantage until they take damage, and so they kept succeeding, and they also have the ability, they have evasion for all things, so if they succeed on the save, they take no damage instead of half damage. So they just kept not being able to damage it, and then there were some small tactical choices that they could have done differently, just how they could have optimized their turns. They made a decision that was valid. Had they made another one, it could have gone differently, and it ended up killing and attempting to eat one of the players. And then the round after, a guy cast a second level inflict wounds, natural 20, so critical hit, and sucked life out of the beast. The very round after, the player failed their death save.
Oh dear.
So, there's a long, drawn-out story, but how I dealt with it is we had one player who left the campaign, so we had his character as an NPC that the character took over for the remainder of that session, and then I worked with him over the course of the time between the next two sessions, and we built his new character. We actually tied his new character's backstory into the backstory of his old character. Nice. His new character is the love interest of his old character. So he switched genders for that character. Nice. So that's interesting, and it was an experience. It's not fun to kill your players. That's true. So that was weird, and it really made me reevaluate how I was building and running the encounters, because I learned that I've been running these encounters like a PC trying to win the combat, whereas I should be running it from the perspective of the NPCs trying to achieve their goals. Yeah. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask a question and trying to think of it. Displacer beings, hold on. Displacer beings. I think it's gone for now. Maybe it'll come back. So
Sure.
let's. So you said you learned. So you're experiencing a learning curve as a DM as well, just by doing things.
Yeah, I'm definitely a newer DM. I'm reading all of the DM based subreddits, D&D Behind the Screen, our D&D, D&D Next, our Ask Game Masters, and there's a fifth one, our RPG. All of them have just wikis just filled with resources of web apps or tools or how to handle character death or how to handle high fantasy versus political intrigue, and so I've just been absorbing those resources and DM advice from Matt Mercer, Matthew Colville, Chris Perkins, all of them.
All right. What I wanted to say, players not asking questions is really a thing. I experienced it myself. I ran the same adventure twice as a campaign starter, and the players just got their job and went there and started doing it, and neither group was questioning the motives of their of the person who gave them the job, or asked any questions at all. I was amazed, but maybe...
Part of that I noticed was actually my fault as I was running them, exploring it, because I was having a little bit of trouble feeding them hooks as they were as they were doing some exploring. I was being a little too realistic in my interpretation of okay, you're exploring a city trying to find a guy. I was being a little too realistic as they were exploring, as opposed to being like, and so then someone, says like, oh yeah, of course, I know him, or just someone pointing them in a direction to go. So I accidentally made that mistake as a DM and set them floundering a little bit, being a little too sandboxy.
Yeah.
So people use railroading as an insult, as a bad term, but I'm learning that it's actually a tool that you need to, learn how to guide people on and off the tracks.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. Some railroading is required at some points just to keep things moving.
Yep.
Okay, and do you have any other anecdote you want to share, either from DMing or from playing?
Let me see, a good anecdote. The best one from DMing is definitely the bear wrestling. Just one of my players, just out of nowhere, they hadn't discussed that part of the plan with me. He just started doing a voice and became Tulio the bear tamer. I made him roll his performance check and he nailed it. And so he just convinced him. And I as the DM was so enjoying his performance that I forgot to continue role playing the NPC that I was supposed to be acting to him.
Yeah.
I was just jaw dropped oh, right, yeah. So that was definitely my most amazing experience as a DM. As a player, one particularly great moment, I was playing in the 3.5 campaign. We went from level 1 to 10 or so before the DM graduated. And I was playing a psionic monk, and we were in this room, in this tower, and the heat was starting to rise. We were starting to have to make constitution checks to survive the heat, and the party was just out of character debating things, and I noticed the DM was starting to roll behind the screen as we were spending a half hour out of character debating what to do, because there was this room with no floors and doors all over the walls.
Right.
And I had a feat where I could psionically charged, run along the wall. So I did that, ran along. I just, without telling the party, I just turned to the DM, was like, I tie a rope off around my waist, tie it to this door, and I run along the wall to open that door and pull it open and grab inside. He was like, great, make a reflex saving throw to try and catch the door, because the feat only lets you run for one round along the wall.
Right.
So I ran along and opened the door and then started to fall. And I did succeed and managed to grab on. Nice. And my party was like, what the fuck are you doing? It was so dangerous. And I was like... And then we all took fire damage, and I was like, "That's why."
That's a cool story. Yeah, sometimes you just have to go with your gut.
Yeah, and you just have to not be afraid to take risks. That's one thing I did. I joined a campaign that I ended up leaving because it was much more Bobo the Clown style D&D, just like funny, random fourth wall breaking stuff. Whereas I much prefer a little more storytelling, a little more realism to it. And but I was playing that character, and I had decided that he was a little paranoid. And but quickly, by about the third session, I realized, this isn't fun to play. To be going through a dungeon, being like, wait, check for traps. It's much more fun to be bold and just take risks, to dive off that cliff, to walk through that portal, which me as a player, if I see a portal in front of me, I'm going to step through it.
Yeah.
It annoys the hell out of both DMs and players. But if you put a portal in front of me, I'm like, yeah, I want to see what's on the other side.
Sure.
So, realistically, you would never want to do that. That's a terrible idea. It could lead to the abyss. It could lead to the Nine Hells. But it's much more fun to be bold and just take action than it is to be overcautious.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay, so any advice or ideas you want to share with other DMs out there?
My quick advice for new DMs is, one, make a list of NPCs and keep it by your side. Just a list of fantasy names. Go to an online generator such as Donjon. Just keep a list of appropriate names: male, female, orc, human, elf. Just have a list of names that you can, because your players will come up to you and say, "Oh, I grab a guy on the street and start talking to him," and then they'll ask, "What's his name?" And you'll just look like a god if you just spout off, "His name's Eric," or the orc's name is Orgthar. Like you'll just, if you just have that list right there by you, it makes things so much smoother. My second piece of advice is, if you're planning an NPC, if you know they're about to go talk to someone, or if you are like pre-planning one between sessions, think about what actor portrays this character. The bumbling fool played by Jack Black is different than the one played by Wayne Knight. The badass tough guy played by Samuel L. Jackson is different than the one played by Pierce Brosnan. And just keep in mind just that little thing. Like I had a merchant. I decided that he was played by the character Badger from Firefly.
Yeah.
And so my players walked into his shop, and instead of saying, "Hello, how can I help you?" he said, "What's your purpose then?" and like I watched my player physically recoil because he was like, "What?" And then they made the deal, they bought their things, but it just gave that NPC just a little bit of personality, just of being he's just a little rough around the edges than the typical "How may I help you?" shopkeep. So just having that one note played by Badger from Firefly gave me that entire small role-play encounter that was just wonderful for my players. So make a list of NPCs, write down what actors they are. I would say if you're a new DM, watch Critical Role. Watch how Matt Mercer does it. It's just an excellent introduction of how to play, how to role play. Watch all the players, how they interpret things in character and react to it. And then all of the various subreddits that I recommend, they all just have so many resources to just expand your knowledge and ask for tips and think about what's the ecology of a mimic. Why would it be living in this dungeon? I love focusing on things like that. Yeah. So D&D Behind the Screen is great for that kind of thing.
All right, and you also wrote a short piece on how to start with a DM, which can be found on your Twitter.
Yes, you can find it on my Twitter. You can also find it on my blog. It's daspiff.blogspot.com. You can follow me on Twitter at daspiff when I'll post when I post a new article, a new blog entry. So check that out. I have one, Intro to DMing, where I talk about a lot of the same advice and link to a lot of the resources I've mentioned. Okay, great. So I'll just I'll put a link to that. Yeah. All right, and then, well, thank you very much. That was fun. Thank you. And hope to hear from you again, how your campaign goes, if there are any more bears. So, yeah, guys, until next time, see ya. Thanks for having me.